Yo, what's good people, it's Cactus and welcome to the ultimate FL Studio drum tutorial. If you're a producer, you'll know how important it is to master drum programming. So in this video, I'm going to teach you everything I know about trap drums, including sound selection, hi-hats, snares, kicks, 808s, percussion and mixing. So by the end of the video, you should have a sick understanding of how to approach your drums for trap beats. Plus, to show some love back for all your support, I just dropped a brand new free loop kit called Inferno, which features 10 dark trap loops with stems, all crafted by me. So feel free to download the kit using the link in the description and follow along because it's one of the best ways you can learn. And let's get straight into it. Alright, so we're inside FL Studio and I just want to quickly show you the Inferno trap loop kit, which is free to download. This first one might be my favorite. This one's hard too. This one would be a good one to use today for the tutorial. So yeah, you can't go wrong with any of these, man. This one's insane. So yeah, you're hearing the quality of these. And it's just free to download, the link in the description. I think this is the one I want to use. This one's going to give me enough space to show you exactly what we could do with drums. So we'll drag this in. We'll just match the project BPM, which is 156. And I'm just going to separate the stems real quick. Alright, so I've split everything out. It's just the same way I had the loop arranged. And if you're wondering how I structure the loops, after every section, I just make a 4-bar gap. So you can cut every 4 bars and then arrange it the same way. Let's just create a pattern for drums. We'll make it 8 bars long. And then we'll just copy that out so this whole thing can loop. We'll also send this loop to a mixer. And we'll name it melody. Then I've got the sub bass sent to a separate one, so we'll just call that sub bass. Before we start adding drums, I want you to go to the master channel and add a Fruity soft clipper. It's a stock plugin, so everyone should have it, and I don't want you to overthink mixing right now. Most of the time when I'm making beats, I just have a soft clipper on the master. I don't do anything crazy, and I'll break it down for you soon. Because the main first point that I want to go through is sound selection. So I'm going to go to my Trap Lords trap kit, which is part of my Vault bundle. Now sound selection is all about taste, but it's all about intention and purpose. So if I'm listening to this loop, I feel like creating just a hard, dark trap beat. So in my head, I want a crunchy snare, hard-hitting 808, crispy hi-hats, and traditional trap sounds. So I'm going to go to my snares, and I just want something that stands out. Like this beef snare. I can already hear that this is crunching through my headphones, and I haven't had to do anything to it. Same with that bite snare. And this one. Now, like I said, I'm making a hard trap beat. So the sounds I'm going to be using are digital sounds. It's not going to be live drum recordings because they'd be more suited towards soul, boom bap, and beats like that. Let me just pull in a snare that probably wouldn't work. Something like this. So even though this is a digital sound, I just know by hearing it that it's not really going to fit the vibe I'm looking for. It's not crunchy enough. Like, listen, it's just way too airy for what I'm going for. So there's no set rules for sound design. It's not like you have to pick certain sounds. It's all about taste, and that's just going to come with practice. So the more beats you make, the more you're going to start to understand what sounds go with what beats. Like, just listen to this. It just sounds weak. But if we use this one, hear how that's just cutting through. We haven't had to do anything to that, and it's because when I sound design these drums, I do all that processing at that stage. I'm adding compressors, EQs, just tweaking everything until it's sounding right. So there'd be no need for me to do all that again at this stage. Now, if you're new to producing, the snare for trap beats usually lands on the 3rd beat. FL makes it visually easy to learn as well. You can see from the colors, so these first 4 are the 1st beat, these are the 2nd, and then that's the 3rd. If it's in a metronome on, you can hear it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. So every 3rd would be the standard place for the snare. You could also add a rim or a clap, but again, that's entirely up to you. So if I was going to make like a vibey trap beat, maybe I'd want to go with a clap. And then same with a rim too. It just completely depends on the vibe I want to go for. So there's no set rules. It's up to you. People always say, but you do just have to trust your ears when it comes to that. So I like to get that standard pattern down before I do anything else. And once we've got a simple pattern, you can add a few filler notes if that's the sound you want to go for. So we could do something like this. Could also do something like this. And then we could add some snare rolls if we wanted to. And I usually like to do those towards the end of the 8-bar. So we could manually do it by playing with velocity. And And then we can also use the chopper tool. So we could bring that out, control and left click to highlight, Alt and U to bring up the chopper. And then this is to play around with the intensity. So that's one option. Then we can change the grid. So we can set it to a third beat, then have something like this, change it back to line, and then maybe bring these down. Just play with the velocity. Again, no set rules. You're the producer, you have to make these decisions, but I'm just showing you some ideas. So if we go to the hi-hat folder, I really like this essential one. It's a tight, crisp, and clear sound, and it just always seems to work. Now, most trap hi-hat patterns start with a two-step, so we could just right-click and select fill each two-step. Obviously, that's very simple, very basic, and sometimes that's all the beat needs. But I'm going to show you some other techniques, because I like to add rolls, and there's a few different ways we can do it. In the latest FL update, you can actually click up here and go to repeat, and then under the notes you want to roll, we can just click in here. And the higher up you add it, the more intense the roll is going to be. So this is a real fast way to just add some rolls. But I like to get a bit more precise. So I can hit F7 to go to the piano roll. And where you add rolls is completely up to you. But some common places to add them are the fourth note here. So I can just drag that out, press Alt and U. And this is going to bring up the chopper. If I bring this up, there'll be less notes. If I bring it down, there'll be more. So I'm feeling that. And then we could just play around with some more. Sometimes it sounds sick going into a snare as well. So if we know a snare's landing here, we could roll the hats into it. We could even change the bounds too. So if we click on that magnet, go to a third beat, for example. So you can see now the grid's changed. So we could do something like this. Just to switch up the bounce. We could also hold control, left click, and then highlight the rolls. And then we can right click to bring the velocity up evenly. Or we can left click to do it manually. Don't be afraid to add silence too. Sometimes we might just want to add a little pause like this. Let's just finish this pattern. Then sometimes I like to add a couple fast ones together. So let's take this. We'll hold shift and left click to copy it. So I like the way that sounds. And then maybe we could add that triplet at the end. So I usually add 4 bars, I delete the rest, we'll right click up here and then press Ctrl and B, and this is just going to copy the pattern. Then I just like to make a change in the second half so it's not as repetitive. And then to make it even more interesting, what we're going to do is slide some of these hi-hat notes. So we've got this triplet at the end. I'm just going to bring the length out, Control left click to highlight, Shift and left click to copy, and then Control and down. We'll bring it down a couple octaves. And then we can make this one a slide note. So what this is doing is sliding this hat note down to this one. But because it's so high pitched, it's going to sound like a zap perk or something. Let's bring it down another one. And then we can actually change the length of the slide to change how the slide is going to sound. So you'll see what I mean. So I'm feeling it there. We don't always have to keep it on the same note as well. We can play around with the pitch. For example, we could bring these two down. Even these. Actually, I'm going to get rid of that roll. We'll do something similar with these two. We'll just bring them down. Now let's move on to the 808s. So sound selection is key here. One mistake that I see a lot of producers making is just picking the wrong 808 sounds, and then they'll try all these different mixing techniques to get the 808 hitting hard, when you could just pick a good 808 to start with. And 9 times out of 10, trap beats are going to be using either the Spins 808 or the Zay. And I get why some producers are against using them, because so many producers are using the same sounds. But at the same time, if they work, they work. I like using the Spins a lot, man. I just know it's a trusty sound to use, and they're overused for a reason. Now whenever I bring in an 808, I usually right click and select cut itself, and that means that the notes aren't going to overlap. You could play with the out dial here to make it a bit shorter, but again, it depends on the vibe you're going for. And then usually I'll jump to pre-computed effects, and then we'll just boost it, even by like 4%. For the 808 notes, you usually want to follow the chord progression of the melody. So if you're making the melody from scratch, it's easy to see what the root note is. But if you're using loops like this one, for example, this is when having a trained ear comes in handy, and that only comes with practice. But there's a few things we can do. Now you can see with me labeling the loop C# minor, there's a good chance that the 808 note is going to be C# minor for the most part. But that's not always the case. Just because it's in that key doesn't mean it's going to be that 808. So I'll show you what I mean. If you go to View, Scale Highlighting, go to Minor Natural, and then C#, just so you can see the notes. If someone's building a melody in C# minor, they might start with a different note, like G#, and then build a chord like this. And then they might come to C#. So the first note would be G sharp and then C sharp. So that's why you don't just want to look at the label and then instantly jump to that note, assuming it's going to be right. But it's a good starting point. The best thing to do is use your ears. So when you're listening to a loop, there's usually a note that you can hum in your head that's going to repeat. And I'll show you what I mean. See how that just kind of stays consistent. And then we want to find that. So it is C sharp. So now we need to figure out this note. So it sounds like it's going lower. So from C sharp, let's bring it down. Could be that. So yeah, if you're new, using a piano can just be an easier way to actually hear the notes that you're adding. Or if you want to stick to an 808, just pitch it up a couple octaves. It's just going to be way easier to hear the actual note. And let's say we don't have the actual key labeled and you don't know how to figure it out with your ears. We've got that melody routed to a mixer, so we're going to open a plugin. I've opened Key Detected by Waves. Now we're just going to play it. And it's going to give us the key. So this is saying D flat minor, which is the same as C sharp. You could also take one of the low notes from the stems. For example, I'm using this piano as the bass. Make sure it's soloed. We'll press Shift and E to bring up Edison. Make sure that's set to record. And we're just going to record the note in. Make sure we get the second one too. So they're the only bass notes we're actually using in the loop. Then we'll click this and select Detect Pitch Regions. Now you can see I was right. So C sharp, then it goes down to B. Most of the time you want a note on the 1. So this is at the beginning of the first bar. And once again, common theme here, but it's just really up to you. This is about your taste and what sounds right to you. So when I'm adding notes, I just listen to the loop and see what bounce sounds right in my head. But there are some common bounces that you might have heard, such as this. Then let's bring that down to C sharp 5. As you can hear, it's sounding a bit distorted, so I'm going to go to the melody. We'll add an EQ. I just want to cut out more of the lows. So it's going to be somewhere around 100 Hertz. But then sometimes you get a lot of mud in the low mids too. You'll hear if I bring this up, there's like a big buildup of frequencies which can clash with the 808. So it's not always about cutting out the bass frequencies. So let's duck this a bit. And maybe we could just turn down the 808 a little bit too. So it's just about finding that sweet spot. The louder you have your 808, the more distortion you might get. But you might like that distortion. Let me show you some more patterns. So similar pattern, but we'll delay the third one. Could add 2 at the beginning, do something like this. But I want to add 2 different 808 sounds, so I'm going to leave a gap in this section. I'll add a different sound and then continue it with the first one. And with the second sound, I think my notes will go there, but I'll add this in as a placeholder until I swap it. Remember, we've got that B note at the end, so we could add it there. Maybe we could add one there as well. So don't be scared to layer 808s with snares. Some producers can be picky like that, but if it sounds good, it sounds good. There's no rules, man. And also, you don't have to stick to that one note. Obviously, if the chords are changing, then you'll follow that progression. And when each chord hits, you'll usually have the first note matching the root note. But then the ones in between, they're the ones you can usually play around with. So common things that can sound good is pitching it up 7, because usually most chords will look something like this. You'll skip a note in the scale, then skip another one. You might have it like that. So I tend to think about what chord they might have used in that loop, and then I'll try and figure out the other notes in that chord. So it could have been E, could have been G sharp, could have been both. Maybe we'll use it. We'll try it with this one. So I like the way that sounds. I'm not going to change it in the first half. I'm going to copy that, and then we'll change it in this one. So up 7. And then to spice up this second half, I'm going to add a note here, and then we'll actually slide this up. So I've got the slide note on top. I'll turn the velocity down here. Could even bring it at the same pitch. Feeling that. Play around with octaves too. So let's bring this one up. Could try some thirds as well. So we could match the hat slides like this. Or we can make it a bit slower. Let's move this last note. Yeah, maybe that. crazy. Another thing you could try is rolls too. Maybe with this one. Okay, so I'm liking that pattern, but now I'm going to add a second 808, and I'll show you what I was talking about. So we'll go to my Deep Suite Hydro drum kit, and then I always just include some bonus essentials on top of the ones for sound design. I want to grab the CTM. Now, if I go in the spins and I go to the wrench tool, I can see that it's cut by 1. So I'm going to go to the CTM and set this to cut by 1 too. So that means that none of these sounds are going to overlap each other. You're never going to have two playing together. And that's what we want. Just in case there's a tail from one sound leading into the other, it can cause a bit of mud. So I'm going to mute these spins notes. We'll go to the CTM. I'm also going to add one here, but we'll bring this velocity down. Because now when it gets to this note, this one's going to stop. Might even add one more, but bring this one down a little bit. Let's hear it now. Let's copy this. We'll bring this octave up. Actually, let's cut this from the spins because it's got that slide. We'll try this. So again, to keep the beat interesting, we could make the pattern twice as long and then only have this in the second half. So you'll have one part with just the spins, and then after 8 bars, the CTM will come in. It's just a subtle way to add variation. Okay, next up we have percussion. So we're going to start with an open hat. We'll just find a sound that we like. I like this one, so we'll bring that in. And again, with open hats, we can also control the length, so we can bring everything down in the envelope except for the hold. And now when we extend the note, it's only going to play for as long as we need it to. Some common things you'll hear are one playing at the beginning, or one just before a snare, so like this, which always sounds fire. We can also clone it and then reverse this one, do something like this. Or we could play around with the pitch as well. So we could have one normal, then one coming down. Try up 2. That's kind of fire. Let's play around with this too. I'm feeling that reverse one. We'll go back to the first one. Maybe add one before the snare. Could add a smaller one as well. So I'm liking this pattern. It's not too much. Just got the one reverse one. These normal ones. Next up, we could grab a second snare. Grab something like this gunner snare. I like to add something a bit lighter for the counter snare. So where I've added those 808s, that's like a common place for a counter snare. But I don't think these two need to overlap here. But I can see that we've got some space here. So maybe we could do this. Could even move this. I might prefer that, you know. So my goal with percussion is to always add more bounce. I'm not trying to have everything overlap. I'm just trying to find space for everything. You want the sounds to kind of bounce off each other rather than all at the same time. Like you can see where I've added these sort of counter snares. They aren't overlapping with anything else too much. They're just adding some more bounce in between everything. Like in between the 808s. Same again. Let's see what other percussion we've got. So that one could work. I like this one too. So even visually just looking for space at this point. Like in this area, I feel like we could add some sort of percussion. Even just like one note would work. Maybe that too. And then copy this over. Or we could change that to this count snare again. So yeah, maybe I prefer that. And maybe we don't even need that last perk. Sometimes those bits of percussion aren't needed, especially if you've got these counter snares. Let's try the shake perk instead, because I'm hearing this bounce here, but I want to bring the velocity down. Let's try a more fitting shaker though. And again, just playing with velocity. I like that. Alright, listening to this beat, it sounded full. I don't need to add anything else right now. So what I'm going to do is just rename everything. I like to keep my projects organized for when I export them. Now I'm just going to highlight everything that isn't linked, press Ctrl and L, and it's linked them with the names now. And to get a quick good mix, it's usually just about leveling and panning. So I'll show you. Usually my melodies sitting somewhere around -6. That snare needs to come up. Snare's going to be sitting around -3. hi-hat a bit below that. 808 is usually the loudest thing, especially if you don't have a kick. And I might even add a kick to this, so just bear with me. So if you're using the 808 as a kick, you might be able to get away with bringing it up a bit more. But yeah, I am actually going to add a kick, so I'll show you. This second 808, it's got a lot of high frequencies, so it's standing out a lot more, so it doesn't need to be as loud in terms of dB readings anyway. It's fine there. You can see with the open hats, they're already panned quite a bit to the right. So I'm going to bring this one to the left to balance it out. And we've got 2 perks, so I can pan one to the right, one to the left. That's really all you need for the mix. Let's get that kick in. One kick that tends to sound good with an 808 is the rat kick, so I'm using that one. Now I'm just going to use this boost knob until I get the sound that we want. If we boosted it up too much, it's just going to sound horrible. But we could find that sweet spot. Like even there, smacking through, but not too much. Now the goal with the kick is to add emphasis to the 808 in this case. So what we could do is just press Control and C on the 808 and then Control and V on the kick, F7 for piano roll, and then we can hit Alt and K. If it's looking something like this, just drag this until everything's on the C note. And now we don't want to keep all of these notes in, and that's boosted a bit too much, so let's bring it down. We'll see what notes we can keep. I'm going to keep those. You know, we'll copy this. We'll link the kick to a mixer, and you'll see this is clipping high in the red, but because we've got the soft clipper on, it won't be clipping on the master. So now the kick's smacking through, everything's hitting hard, and I'm happy with the way it sounds. So now we could just do a quick arrangement. Because you might think it sounds a bit busy, but when I arrange beats, I don't have everything playing together all at the same time. All I did there was click on the pattern and then go to split by channel. And the way I arranged this loop was by having the hook first. So I'm just going to bring this out. We'll have an 8-bar intro. We'll just bring the melody back. Maybe these two as well. Remember, we've got that sub bass as well. So we can have that there. So this will be the intro, we'll just label it. This will be the hook, this will be the verse, and then we'll want one more section for a bridge. But in the hook, we won't bring the kick in straight away. We'll save the open hats, and maybe even the snare and the shaker. In the verse, we'll cut everything here. And then one thing I forgot to mention was at the end of your 808 pattern, what you usually want to have is an extra note, but with the velocity all the way down. And that way, when you cut the pattern, you won't have the tail of the 808 carry over. You're gonna hear it stop. So with the verse, we'll do something similar. We'll cut all of the percussion and the kick until the second half, and then we'll just bring this intro back in. Last thing you might want to add is some sort of transition. So let's grab this. So yeah, let's have a listen from the beginning. Sounded crazy. So quick cut up the drums, but we're just keeping the energy. This beat turned out mad, you know. Coming up to the bridge. So if you're feeling this one and you learned everything you needed to know about trap drums, then make sure you like the video. And if you want to download this loop kit for free, the link's in the description.